Hi, everyone. Hello. I'm so happy to see you all here I'm in Tbilisi. I returned from Israel early in the morning Friday, and it feels so, uh, the whole trip to Israel was so surreal. It was one of the most difficult trips in my life. And to be honest, I don't know the results of my exam, and I'm not really 100% happy with how I dealt with the questions and answers afterwards. Um, just a second. I'm also trying to, yes, it's so wonderful to be safe and sound. This is true. Let me share with you before we begin the links, because I've been adding some more tours to my schedule. This week I'm doing the tours on a light mode because my head was so busy with my studies, with my exam, with the missile attack that happened last week exactly. And now I'm here with my boys and I carry on with my tours. It feels surreal for sure. And I'm so happy to have you here on this tour. I know Oranienbaum is not very, I would say, popular, well-known residence of the Romanov family, but it is a remarkable one, and it sheds lights on some less known stories. For example, this pavilion that I'm standing next to, well, you'll see that also on the video. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny pavilion. It's kind of called the Palace of Peter III, but it's not really a palace. It only has 6 rooms. But, you know, there's a lot. There's a lot to share. And yeah, Joanne, you're right. That week was a roller coaster. As I said, I don't know the results yet of the exam. So I could have done a little bit better with the key question answers in the end. Those were questions like about anything not related, to my subject. So I answered some of them. Some of them I don't think I answered correctly, but they don't fix it. They don't correct you on the spot. They just put the tick, on their notes, and that's it. So it's likely, well, I mean, it's for sure I won't know my results until the end of Pesach or Passover, which means that in early May, I will only know my results. Well, I tried my hardest, taking into account the the stress. Well, we'll see. But I've been helped every step of the way, as you know. If some of you are not really aware of what the past week was like on my YouTube channel, and here is the link, obviously on the chat. The video of the recent updates from me is there. And yeah, so last week, the previous episode I did, it was actually a week ago. It was about the pavilion, the Chinese palace of the Oranienbaum. And now this is the next episode about the Peter III palace. Basically, this story is, we're gonna see the beautiful interiors. We're gonna walk even in the park, but the whole story is actually about how this emperor who ruled honestly 186 days, that was all about his reign. Then he was dethroned by his wife. We know her very well, Catherine the Great. Um, and like it happens, with the victors. So of course, there's very little about, well, in history about those who had been defeated, or at least very little positive, like good things mentioned about them. So history tried really, really hard to erase every good memory of Peter III from every book. But, well, today we're going to rectify that because Shavua Tov, Don, I'm happy to hear from you. And Hag Pesach Sameach to everyone who's celebrating. So let's begin because the video is quite long, and I hope I'll be able to do it without really overrunning much. Just in case if I forget. So in 2 hours from now, I'm doing another tour about St. Petersburg for all virtual tours. It's about the burial site of the Romanov family, Petersburg Cathedral. It's there. And tomorrow I'm doing the last episode of the Hermitage Museum, the Impressionism, Post-Impressionism collection. We'll finish the talk with about Henri Matisse. Last week when I finished the tour, exactly that moment, the missiles were launched our way. So I'll finish the talk about Henri Matisse and the Russian connection of Henri Matisse, and I added another Russian artist from the collection of the Hermitage, because Hermitage does not really focus on Russian art, but that artist deserves to be, included in the names of those great artists I've been talking about for the past couple of months, And actually, if you look at the schedule, then you'll see that next week I'm launching another premiere, which is the Russian Museum of St. Petersburg. So basically, the Russian Museum is not only a museum of all Russian art, starting from icon painting, but it's also a Romanov residence, a very important one in the heart of St. Petersburg. There is a lot to talk about, and of course, loads of art. And I remember when I mentioned it a couple of months ago, many of you wanted to see this. So let's see how it goes. If there is enough attendance, if it's feasible, I'll carry on with Russian Museum because there's a lot. And we're going to be talking about even Russian icons. There are going to be several episodes, some interiors, some stories, some rumors, some legends as well. Well, like, in every royal residence, basically. Okay, so I'll turn off the chat for now, as usual. You know the drill better than I do. And I'll start sharing the screen. Give me a second. And I'm so, so grateful to each and every one of you who sent me, emails, direct messages, DMs, everywhere, basically, text messages, WhatsApp, Telegram, everywhere, asking how I am. I just literally didn't have time to reply each and every one. So that's why that update video is on my YouTube. So, of course, Peter the Great, it's all about him, just to remind you of where we are. Originally, these lands where Oranienbaum residence is were given to Prince Alexander Menshikov by Peter the Great. So he's the most loyal friend who, after Peter's death, was basically, in just 2 years after he died, he was sent to exile, accused of embezzlement, bribery, and all sorts of things connected with money. And he was sent in exile, deprived of all his property. And the residence will be basically changing hands among the Romanovs and also several institutions. And immediately after Menshikov was exiled, this residence was given, not exactly that palace that we've just seen, right? But it was given to a naval school, well, a military school, okay, let's put it this way, with no really details. But then when Elizabeth got to the throne, Peter's daughter, and she ruled for 20 years, closer to the end of her rule, well, she didn't know that would be the end. I mean, but she kind of, she was already about 15-ish, 13, around 13 years on the throne. She knew she didn't have children, and she needed someone to rule after her, someone related to Peter by blood. And she had a sister who had a son. He actually was Peter Karl Ulrich from Goldstein. It's Prussia, basically. It's the area in Prussia. So he was the direct descendant. Well, he was a descendant of Peter the Great. He was nephew to Elizabeth, grandchild to Peter the Great, sort of grandchild. So he was invited to rule. He was invited to first settle down, to learn things, learn Russian history, Russian language. And he had his wife with him, Sophia Augusta Frederica, of another Prussian, let's say, county, Anhalt-Zerbst. And, they were happily married, first several years. They were quite happy with their marriage. And they lived in Russia under Elizabeth. And after Elizabeth died, Peter Karl Ulrich became Peter III. By that time, he had already learned a lot about Russia, about Russian language, Russian history, Russian ways. But he only ruled for 186 days because Catherine, um, just dethroned him. By that time they had been at odds, to put it mildly. So we'll talk about it as the tour goes because I don't want to keep you waiting. And uh, Peter, well, while he just became an emperor, of course, they lived in the big palace, the one that I showed you a couple of episodes ago. So this video is a combination of photographs, videos taken at different times. One video was taken by Oleg, another video was taken by me, also some old photographs for you to see. And so the first palace is the big one that I took you a few episodes ago. That was the main residence, even before they were crowned monarchs. But before he was crowned monarch, he also had this, this pavilion that we're heading to. It's called Palace of Peter III, but it wasn't exactly his palace. It was his bag. It was a playground. So Peter built for himself he had a mock army and a kind of a mock fortress. The first one, it was just called Peterstadt after him, but then it was renamed into Yekaterinburg, so after Catherine, his wife. And he built another one, a bigger one. And by the way, these are the gates to the bigger one. These were the gates to the bigger mock fortress. And that fortress was, well, of course, it was basically the miniature copies, so to speak, of proper fortresses. This is the model. It's the photo. I found it online, but it's the photo of the model you can find in that museum. And so you see, this is the house. So this is that palace that we're going to explore after we walk a little bit around the area, and this is the entrance. So basically, the territory from the gates to the palace, it all was a small mock fortress of Peter III. And he had two mock fortresses, one small one named after his wife and his. Well, this is another model from another museum in St. Petersburg. And they had fights. Peter's fortress would be attacking the Yekaterinburg fortress, named after his wife. So that kind of really tells a lot about, about the relationship between husband and wife. They also had a small mock fleet, small one, two small frigate ships. And of course, Peter's frigate would be launching cannonballs on the shooting cannonballs on Catherine's frigate ship, and so it was merciless. And actually, you see here, it even had a moat. So they had everything there, all the proper houses, that should be there, even a church building for the mock army. And the soldiers were, by the way, from Prussia, from Goldstein. So, I mean, like, it was a lot better than just, toy led soldiers, right? A lot better, I know. Anyway, so he enjoyed it very much. And of course, for him, it wasn't just for fun. It was a way to prepare, because back then every Romanov, even crowned monarch, but not even crowned ones, they were supposed to know all things about war, army, and more often than not, Tsars would have to participate in military campaigns. It would be less, than Peter's, of course, but than Peter the First. I mean Peter the Great, but Peter the Third, he was willing to actually, to fight. He had uh well he was, I would say, very much because a big fan of Prussian king, and he really, really, really wanted to rearrange and reform Russian army into this, war machine, exactly as it was in Prussia. This is just the kind of a scheme of what was there. Now you can find almost anything, and it has even like it has barns, it has horse stables, it has the armory, it has arsenal, it has a commandant's house, the guards, everything. So so it was, probably every boy's dream back then, but only very, very special boys and young gentlemen could afford having something like that. Obviously, it was all destroyed, and the very I would say sad thing is that the most final changes were made just about 6 days before he was dethroned. That's it. So this is the river. It's a natural body of water, but exactly the moat all around the small fortress of Oranienbaum. So the water from the river was exactly in the moat. Then the moat was filled up, of course. So um, time was merciless towards Peter in general, Peter the Third, I mean. So the only two constructions that are left is these entrance gates and this palace. So this video was filmed 2019, 2000 no 2020, even some 2020. So there were also like a lot of COVID restrictions were lifted on that summer. So it was good to go there. Uh, so it's in general, it's a tiny building, as I said, and you can see that there is this entrance. It was really like the design is a bit quite unusual. The architect, and by the way, Antonio Rinaldi, an Italian architect, invited. Well, he was invited actually, by Elizabeth, but well, Rinaldi came into his own attempt of Catherine the Great. And the palace looks bigger thanks to that semicircular entrance. So as if like a part of the building was cut from it, but visually, actually, that definitely adds some size and grandeur to this tiny, tiny palace. And this is a modern sculpture. I think it's like early 2000s. Some St. Petersburg artist, I don't remember his name. So it was absolutely unheard of to see a monument to Peter III at any moment, be it before the revolution of 1917 or after, because, well, only, and we are now on the first floor of this of Peter's residence, because only in early 2000s, it only became possible to, well, they were only the first researchers published about Peter III, and like a different view on his reign. Anyway, so the first floor of the palace is basically just services, offices of the museum workers. Yeah, you have here the original stove, but it's not really remarkable. It has a model as well, as I said, of what the residence used to be. And there is this staircase. You can't really say it's a gala staircase, but it's the only staircase because the palace is tiny, as I said. And this is, by the way, the portrait of Antonio Rinaldi, the Italian architect, who, by the way, built loads of palaces in St. Petersburg. But this was one of his very first works. And it's, by the way, not really classicism because he was the artist of classicism. It's a Rococo style, which really was very, very, I would say, short-lived in St. Petersburg because Catherine, when she got the throne to herself, she switched immediately to classicism. So we are in the waiting room, and of course, as I said, it wasn't the palace in the full sense of the word. It was like a small, okay, you can say it was a hunting palace, because obviously these lands were also used for hunting. So it was just one of the areas of the hunting grounds. And this is the pavilion where the hunters, would have time, to just relax, refresh, maybe have a meal, and that was it. So it's not like anybody really lived there. However, there was bed chambers, and yeah, well, Peter liked to stay there. We know that, but it wasn't his permanent residence. Um, about Oranienbaum in general, why it is so unique, in fact, because unlike most of the suburban residences in St. Petersburg, Oranienbaum was not invaded by the Nazis. So it was not looted. It was not destroyed by the Nazis. Yes, it was under fire. And yes, there was some damage, but it was minor compared to what was left of Peterhof. I'm sure you remember the photographs I showed you, the tours that we did. There were destructions, there were also a lot of neglect in the different periods of time. But there was a restoration carried out in the last quarter of the 19th century. And so this is the result of that restoration. Some parts of the floors, for example, wooden floors were not saved, but what was saved, so it was restored and it was it was preserved. And on the floors, you will see different floors in those 6 rooms. You will see that there is some inclusions, like some sections of the original parquet floors, incorporated in the late 19th century parquet. So this is just one of those examples I just needed to explain. And look at the splendor. So that definitely was a very special palace, and it was a very special palace for Peter, because this is where Peter definitely practiced. He practiced many things there. And he also was given really good teachers. Elizabeth took care of his education. And as you can see, he was a fan of all things art. And the Prussian King Friedrich, well, he was a big fan of him. You have seen those porcelain miniatures. So they were all, well, they're supposed to be a small porcelain army that was supposed to number hundreds of soldiers made of porcelain. So not all of them were made, not all of them survived. Well, at least something. So yeah, here they are. And you can see the details. So it was just a precise, very detailed sculptures, figurines made from porcelain. The ceilings are all original, so they survived. Yes, there was the restoration made, as I said. So in the late 19th century, there was an attempt to kind of, I don't know, kind of, give it another try to talk about Peter III. But, well, and that's why exactly some rooms of Peter III in the main palace were restored, and also this palace was restored, and the Chinese palace was restored. So it's not completely right to say that none of the Romanovs were ever interested in Peter III, but because that was really stormy years of Russian history after it was like 1870s when the restoration started. The restoration finished, but then the Russian Emperor Alexander II was killed, and then it just there were a lot of other things to be worried about, and then many other things as well. So it was a nice attempt, and it was a good start, but it will put on hold for a longer time for sure. So welcome to Pantry. And this is all original, by the way. This is just a small, tiny pantry. It's not even a room. It's like a small, I don't know, a corridor. And the corridor, so here are like 20 something small shelves, all covered with silver. It's like silver shelves on which the Chinese vases, the Chinese porcelain vases, and the Chinese porcelain miniatures are placed. And these are not copies. These are not a la China porcelain made in the Russian imperial factory, as we know, imperial porcelain factory, but actually the Chinese things. We know that Oranienbaum, thanks to the Chinese palace, has a lot of actual, Chinese porcelain in its collection. And because it was not looted, it all survived. And we also know that this frenzy about Chinese porcelain, it actually stimulated the foundation of imperial porcelain factory, and the Russian Empire was the third country to actually, open the secrets of porcelain making, and the third country to launch porcelain production. And yes, you see it all it has this metal shine, so there's all silver. It's just a genuine silver on the shelves. And and speaking of Chinese things, for example, the doors. These are just the doors, but the doors are also the Chinese panels. And we know that because of that frenzy, craze about China, there were also Russian artists and European artists who imitated Chinese works. So in this palace, we also have the imitation of Chinese works done, just in the smallest details, just exactly as the Chinese artists would do. So basically, this is just the doorway, and this is just the window sill, the window framing. These are the wooden panels with different, carved details, lacquered. No, just because they could. And here in this room, you see a lot more of them. And we are now in the, believe it or not, but we are actually in the in the biggest room in this tiny, tiny palace. And well, for example, just give me a second. I want to show you before I forget. You will see some more Chinese things, but look, so they are 3D. So they were actually added on top of it. This is all wooden carvings. It's all covered with silver, but it's woodwork. And this is also woodwork. And then and this is like gold. And yeah, silver, gold, and then it's all covered with the layers of, of a lacquer, and so you understand, and it's all original. So this is a very, very big deal. And so this is kind of a picture hall, painting hall. And from the very beginning, it was a sort of a small picture gallery. Peter the Third was a big fan of art. He was very talented himself. He played violin. He was a virtuoso musician. Everybody noted that, and even the years of Catherine on the throne, and lots of lies about him. Well, this was never changed. So he was very talented, and next time I will be taking you to a small, actually, a picture palace. So now this is just a painting room or a picture room with 63 paintings. But there was a whole, like a picture palace, a pavilion, but it looks like a tiny palace. And this is where Peter basically also exhibited his collection of art, his collection of musical instruments. He even had small Kunstkamera there. In this room, after Peter died, actually, speaking of the collection, there was mostly like European art of the 17th and 18th century, and in the collection, they're not copies; they were all originals. We know that in the collection there were paintings by the Dutch artists, um, different still lives, and after Peter died, all these paintings were taken by Catherine the Great to the Winter Palace, and they became part of the Hermitage collection, of course, because we know that almost immediately she got on the throne. So he was dethroned on the 28th of June, 1762. So in 1764, Catherine purchased the first art collection from a Prussian merchant. And from then on, as I would often say, she was unstoppable. So, this was just also kind of, acquisitions, kind of legal acquisitions. Uh, I mean, legitimate since she was on the throne, kind of, but she was illegitimately on the throne, of course, as we know. But surprisingly, he ruled for 42 years. So it's just, how it worked. And then when in late 19th century, when they got down to restoration of the palace, the family of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, and I mentioned them in the previous episodes, so they are exactly they're related to Romanovs. So they stayed in this. They got this as their residence. One of the daughters of the Romanovs married to a representative of Mecklenburg-Strelitz aristocratic family from Prussia. So they were in charge. Maybe they just wanted to kind of pay tribute to another Prussian monarch, who wasn't exactly, well loved and well remembered. So they restored several palaces, including this room, and but they were only able to get four original paintings from the collection, such as the birds, for example. The birds are original, and well, the rest are originals from the Hermitage Museum collection, but they are not the ones who actually were here in the beginning. So 4 of the 63 are original, the ones who have always been here, so who were there at times of Peter III. But the rest, original, but not really the original to this museum, let's put it this way. And well, the floor. So they only were able to save the middle section, and the rest is the restoration of the late 19th century. And they also discovered they were of course in the post-Soviet times there was restoration carried out. Yeah. So and at some point there was this ceiling painting found. So the cupids with like different kinds of art, music, poetry, fine arts, and I'm not sure what this one is doing. Maybe the art of being idle. It's also art, So maybe that. I'm not exactly sure, or maybe it's dance. I don't know, but it's really nice. I mean, this room is the biggest one in the palace. Of course, it's tiny, but the ceiling is done, and it's kind of this arched ceiling, and it really gives you, it really gives you the sense of kind of a volume and space. The rest of the rooms are very small. For example, let me also check the time. Okay. Yeah, so I think it's time for Q&A now, and then we'll continue with the study of Peter III. And yeah, so just a second, I'll turn the chat back on. And also, as you can see in the chat, I provided the links to my PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee account. So this is the way you can support me. Also, regarding my my monthly sponsors get together for Zoom, I will be scheduling it sometime next week. So just make sure you check your mails, from time to time, and I will make sure that I'll get this across, because I know that some of you still are not getting the emails. No matter how I try, there's still something going on, and I will be, sharing more updates with you. Some details of my trip to Israel. Thank you so much for your support. And also thank you to the new sponsors as well. And so, as I said, next time, by the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in. That's exactly why I just, put the presentation on hold. The next episode, which will be the last episode of Oranienbaum, it will be about first of all, I'll be talking about the small painting palace of Peter III, with some really unique exhibits, because as I said, the residence was never looted, it was evacuated, and most of the exhibits are back, to their original legitimate place, so to speak. And also we'll walk in the park, and we'll see absolutely unique thing. It's the small pavilion that was the part of the big slide. They had their they had their roller coaster here in Oranienbaum, a very famous one. So now only part of the construction exists, but it's quite special. And we'll walk in the park just to see other interesting constructions, pavilions. We'll talk also about the visit of Nicholas II to Oranienbaum, because obviously Nicholas II, he wasn't a frequent visitor, but yes, of course, they were invited, and Mecklenburg-Strelitz family were directly related to the Romanovs. So yes, of course, it was visited by the last Romanovs. And if you're interested in the last Romanovs in more detail, so tonight, in actually 90 minutes from now, I'll be giving a tour about the burial sites of the Romanovs, including the burial sites of Nicholas II and his family. and I'll be talking about this for virtual tours. The link is there on the chat. Thank you, Dolly. Yeah, actually, today, well, last night I slept like 10 hours, and this is the first time, actually, in more than 1 week, that I slept longer than 6 hours. So it was the first time. Yet, really, not really the most pleasant dream. So I would wake up very often, but then I would go back to sleep. That was a really tough week. And honestly, last week, I think so. Almost exactly a week ago, that started. And exactly last week, I thought I would never see my boys again. So honestly, I didn't know what to expect. So I'm so happy to be able to sit here in this armchair because I still don't have a table, and give you the talk, about this distant St. Petersburg residence is just absolutely surreal. Yes, Chag Sameach to everyone celebrating. And thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to have you on this tour. So let's get back to the video. Thank you, Marlis. What has the building a German name? The German name? What do you mean? The Oranienbaum? Oh, Oranienbaum. Well, it is not something unusual for Peter the Great, because the name was given. Well, the name was given either by Peter or Menshikov. We're not entirely sure, but definitely at the times when Peter was alive and Menshikov was his best friend and most loyal associate. Um, the and then it looks like, the legend has it that Menshikov planted a lot of orange trees, actually pomeranz trees, like mandarin trees all over the residence. It happened after they visited the Netherlands in the Grand Embassy of Peter the Great, and Menshikov was there, and they were so enthralled, and they were so fascinated with the story of William of Orange, the king of the Netherlands, William III of Orange, and so they just wanted to kind of, pay tribute to him, or well, something like that. We don't know much, but that's the idea. And Oranienbaum means an orange tree. So this is why, the residence was allegedly by Peter the Great, the name was given to the residence. But it's a legend, but I don't see why it really cannot be the truth. So let's get back to the presentation. I know some parts of the video are really of not the best quality because the video was taken some time ago, and of course my phone at that time could do less, so that's why exactly I included some more photographs. And it's not that easy also to film in this palace because some of the rooms are actually not very bright. It's done, in order to also preserve some artworks and the lacquered details, such as the window sills, such as the window frames. Well, this is the study of Peter III. So yes, he did, as I said, he even had his bed chambers here. So technically he could, and he did stay here from time to time, but it wasn't his main place, to stay. He had a palace. But since these lands were also part of the hunting grounds, in this room, there used to be these paintings. It was about art. It was about, some pastoral scenes. Well, most of the items that we have in, like the interiors are original. Some of them restored. Some furniture, some furniture, most of the furniture actually comes from the collection of Oranienbaum, but we don't know exactly if it was here in this palace. But we know, for example, that this chest of drawers, it was made in Russia, but it was made exactly in that chinoiserie style, a la Chinese style. And it used to be in one of the how shall I put it, in one of the pavilions that no longer exists. But So this chest of drawers is here, and this is one of those pastoral scenes. As you see, the painting was damaged, but it looks like it was damaged on purpose and at times of the Romanovs, because if you remember in the previous room, in the painting hall, in the picture hall, the paintings were arranged, almost like in a tapestry-like manner or like a wallpaper-like manner. So there was no really a free space between the paintings, right? And there were no frames really. So it was just one of those, ways the paintings could have been, were exhibited. And so it looks like that painting was, for this purpose, many paintings would be cut, or even, even kind of some extra paintings. Well, there would be some extra painting done. Let's say if the painting was smaller the size, there would be some elements added to it. That was quite possible at that time. So paintings were not considered as an artwork, but as wallpapers, like that. So the ceiling in this room is particularly fantastic, original, and which is very rare. I mean, for a St. Petersburger, it means a lot, because like these, crossed flowers, flowers. This is exactly the signature of Antonio Rinaldi, who is admired in St. Petersburg. Some of the great palaces of the second half of the 18th century were created by him. And this is like a big part of, Russian heritage. Yeah. And again, you see here in this photograph, you see this, you have seen the section of the parquet floor preserved. I'm not sure whether they just didn't bother to preserve some other sections. It's not possible that only the middle sections, most beautiful one, survived just a century. But well, that's what we know. And we know, of course, that 19th century restoration was nowhere near the, the scientific restoration that aims at preserving everything original and recreate everything that's not been preserved to the smallest details, and according to the technologies to the contemporary technologies. I mean, contemporaneous to that period. So of course that was not the case in late 19th century. It was not the case, but well, it was still a good way, kind of to pay tribute to Peter III. Well, one of those outrageous restorations in the 19th century will be, for example, to the sculptures, many sculptures, antique sculptures that would be in the collection of the Hermitage, for example, the sculptures would be hired to actually make hands and attach the newly created hands to those, Roman and Greek sculptures. That was the case. Of course, it's something unheard of nowadays, and it sounds really ridiculous, but that's how it was. So we can't really blame them, we can't really blame them for all the efforts. And again, in this room, you can see those beautiful window frames, all these wooden details attached later on. And as you're looking in the details, I'll just very little tell you about Peter III. So he was, as I said, he was very much into all things, army, all things war, and he wanted to rearrange Russian army. By the way, this is how the room looked before the restoration. The final restoration happened in 2018. So there was still no really paintings on the walls, but they would be added later on. They were discovered in a really bad condition, so restored in the 20th century and returned to the places. But that's the same room, the study of Peter III. So and when Peter, after Elizabeth died in early 1762. Of course, it's not really much you can do in 186 days. There's not much really you can do, but something actually was done. And as we are now exploring the next room, So this is the room that we enter from the study. It's like the bed chambers of Peter. We can see also the number of panels. We can see well, sorry, it's not the bed chamber. The bed chambers is the next room, but it's the same room. Just some more visuals, and some photos were taken actually before the well, the paintings were returned, but not all of them. So these photos show kind of intermediary stage. So you can see that, and then we will go to the bed chambers. So and I'll just continue about Peter III and his policy. One of the first things Peter actually changed, it was about the slavery, because as you know, up until 1861, Russian peasants were private property of Russian aristocracy. It was kind of serfdom, to put it kind of in other words, which doesn't really change much. So people were not free. So, but what Peter did, and it was early 1762, he issued a law that peasants that kind of served in the church or served on the land that belonged to a church were free. They were not really private property of the church. They were free. And they would only have to pay an annual tax that equaled 1 ruble, which was very, very, very doable, like very doable. So it was almost nothing. So, but these people were free. They didn't belong to a church. Well, church couldn't really be a master, so it was too much, but it was before that. So before that, church owned people as well. I know. Then also what he did, he abolished the sort of secret police. Well, Peter, as you know, he was total control freak, and he had a lot of trust issues. So Peter the Great, I mean, not Peter the Third, Peter the Great was the control freak and had lots of trust issues. He created an organization, kind of a secret police. So basically, you can say it's the grandfather of KGB kind of thing. And basically, upon like only one report, anonymous report, a person and that unlucky person could have been taken to prison, then to court, and then disappear. It only applied to like kind of a state or emperor related issues, like state treason or something like that. I mean, it was a big deal, right? So you understand that there were a lot of definitely there were cases when those were really false accusations, but there was not much people could do. I mean, those who were accused, those who were reported, and Peter changed that. So the boudoir is actually connected with the bed chambers, and we will talk a little bit more in the end about Peter III and how he ended up. So this room is very manly, I would say, very different from the previous rooms. The wooden panels, the wooden floor, the bigger section has been preserved. And I am a big fan of the ceiling over there. So we have some footage of the ceiling. Well, the fireplace looks magnificent, obviously not in order nowadays. And just keep following the world news, and I like the ceiling. The original ceiling, it has a lot of carved plaster details, and it actually shows the scenes, the hunting scenes and the mock training. You'll see all around the perimeter and the different scenes of the training of the military parades that took place here in Oranienbaum and Peter III mock army. As I said, Peter had two fortresses, one small one, Yekaterinburg, named after his wife. Here, for example, as I said, there was also a small fleet that he had on the rivers of the river. And these are 3D details, so you can actually touch them. I mean, it's all original. It's restored, but it's original. And also Well, the wooden panels, they've always been there, have always been there. Um, and by the way, through the boudoir, you could actually use the secret staircase that would take you downstairs to the first floor, where, as I said, now there is no really, it's not, it's just kind of services. There's no exhibitions there on the first floor. So right now, just on your way to this secret ladder staircase, there is exhibited the uniform, the gala uniform of Peter III. It's a it's a rare thing. So that's that staircase, winding staircase, very small. It really makes you feel claustrophobic, even if you don't have claustrophobia. You're likely to feel something very, very similar to that. And as I said, entire palace is really tiny. I mean, some rooms feel cozy, but some you just feel really like jammed there. But luckily, when I was there myself that year, there wasn't really many visitors. There were no tourists. It was still the pandemic time. When Oleg filmed, it wasn't also really crowded. So well, like there are no other people, and of course they try to limit the number of people in the room. So I asked him to film as many details of the seating as possible. And when I was there, I, by the way, didn't notice that actually in the very middle there is over there is actually this is the insignia of Peter III. When he converted to Orthodoxy, he was given the patronymic name Fedorovich. And as you know, the patronymic names that Russian monarchs, well, previously non-Orthodox monarchs would be taking, it would be done, like it was just their choice. Normally, it would be the names of the icons. For example, there was the icon of Our Lady, the Fedorovskaya icon. And for example, the wife of Nicholas II, Alexandra, who was English from Germany, right? So she didn't have any patronymic name, right? It's just a very Russian thing. Patronymic name is the name of your father. It's given to both women and men. So she got the patronymic name after the Fedorovskaya icon of Our Lady. So Peter Peter the Third did the same thing. So he was Pyotr Fedorovich, Peter Petro in Russian, and this is his insignia over there on the floor, on the ceiling, and I didn't see that when I was there. And so we have just a bit different view, a more close-up view. So this is just one of the views of this the second Peter fortress, Peterstadt fortress. This is what you can see from the window. So basically, as I said, everything is in walking distance. However, this residence is quite far from the palace itself. So obviously nobody would go there on foot. Now you can go on foot. It's gonna be some 10 minutes walk. Um, so also the middle section of the floor preserved. I also feel just some other rooms, just floors in some other rooms, kind of summing it up. So we could say that all the middle sections of the floors in the palace were preserved. And this is the restoration of the 19th century. Obviously, had it been restoration in the 20th century, especially I would say in the post-Soviet times, they would have tried to preserve a lot more, like every tiny detail of the wooden floor would have been saved, But as I said, 19th century, that's quite different. And now, as we're looking at some old photographs taken in the pre-revolutionary Russia, I will just tell a bit more about Peter III. And there's one more thing that he did that kind of was supposed to please the royalty. I mean, not the royalty, but the aristocracy. He issued a law bill freeing the aristocrats from serving in the army. That would give them more freedom and would give them, opportunity to take care more of their finances, of their household, of their residences that they owned. And of course, they also owned, serfs. They owned their peasants, and they were supposed to take care of them more. So that was also that idea. It wasn't really to please aristocracy, but it was to it was to also kind of give an extra care to the peasants. So aristocracy liked that idea. Of course, they were before that everyone was supposed to serve for about 20 years in the army. And of course, then who took care of the number of the royal estate facilities? Well, that's a big question. So, and as you see, so photographs of the ceilings, all the same, right? So all the same. And again, loads of silk, loads of Chinese silk, loads of different Chinese or China, or like China inspired details. Well, this chest is no longer around, but the elements, the sculptures, the vases, they were all evacuated before the second. Actually, even in the Soviet times, so the palace was not turned into a museum immediately. It was rented by different institutions like research facilities, army. So it was all put into storage. And then the war happened. After the war, there was an idea to actually, to return to make it a museum. And this is when a lot of items were taken from their storages. Now Oranienbaum is part of the Peterhof Museum branch, Peterhof Museum Complex. I think it's the better wording. Yeah, Peterhof Museum Complex. It's about 30 minutes drive from Peterhof to Oranienbaum. And I think that was actually the last video. Yeah. Okay. So let me get back to Peter the Third himself. Yeah. Just a few more things, and then we have a Q&A, and I'll let you go, and hopefully see you in 1 hour from now in St. Petersburg, Peter and Paul Cathedral. The link is there on the chat if you missed that. Obviously, but the thing is that at that point already, Peter and Catherine had been at odds, as I said, and they would be really enemies. Peter had been seeing another woman, a lady in waiting to Catherine the Great, Elizaveta Vorontsova, and I mentioned her in one of the previous episodes because there was even a room given to her. They had one child together that would become future Paul the First, and we know that Paul the First had to wait for 40 plus years for his mom to die to be able to actually get the throne, because he was legitimate on the throne. He was the son of Peter the Third, but his mom took over the throne from him. So, and she wanted power, and she had very powerful. Catherine also had several lovers, favorites, and she wanted power, and she knew that her favorites were very, very, very powerful, and they could get her the power. So we cannot really get into the head of Catherine, but what we know is that on the 28th of June, Catherine, from Peterhof, she wore a man's costume, and she took a horse, and she just galloped to St. Petersburg. In a matter of several hours, she arrived to St. Petersburg. She met with a group of her of the group of plotters, and then so for months, they tried to destroy the reputation of Peter. So they did it very meticulously. It's not like this idea came to their minds all of a sudden, on 186th day. Of course not. It actually, the idea was planted in their heads even before he got to the throne. So it was really like long-term planning. And then eventually, the church was also against him. The people in aristocracy in general was against him, saying that he was a fool, that he couldn't really think properly. He was a too big fan of Friedrich of Prussia, and he would be happy to give the territories of Russia to Prussia just because he admired him and things like that. That never happened, by the way. That never happened. He did unite with Prussia, but not to give the territories of Russia to Prussia. No, just to gain more territories. They wanted to fight against Denmark. That didn't happen also, but that's a different story. And the church on that night gave permission, blessed Catherine. The church blessed Catherine for the throne, of her own husband. So then with all that blessing and all that secret document signed, they all rushed on their horseback to Oranienbaum to find Peter III, give him the ultimatum, and convoy him to a small palace in Ropsha. It's the area not far from St. Petersburg, but there is nothing really there. They had small hunting grounds there. There was a palace. It's not existent anymore. There are a lot more palaces than you think, and there were. And then, he was there basically incarcerated. He was under home arrest. And then, he was visited by people. And one day, just a couple months after the dethroning, he was he was strangled to death. But in official documents, it was mentioned that he had a bleeding in his stomach and hemorrhage, and so he died from that. So obviously we know the story. We know that he didn't die from that. He can't really die from hemorrhoids. He can't really die from there, right? So from that. Oh, anyway, I mean, it had to be something really, really drastic, but of course it was all staged. So the chat is back on. Q&A is here, and I remind you that in an hour from now, I'm waiting for you in Petersburg Cathedral. Tomorrow, there's going to be one tour. It's about Henri Matisse, part that I didn't have time to finish last week. And there's one more artist of the 21st century whose artworks are in the collection of the Hermitage, which is a big deal, and he's one of the most expensive 20th century artists in the world, so it's a big name. It's going to be a surprise, and I'll just keep the thrill, keep the suspense till tomorrow night. And starting from next week, I will be doing several live walks in Tbilisi, not on my YouTube channel though. There's just other ones that were planned. And it's going to be premiere in new area of Tbilisi as well, another avenue shaped in the 19th century, early 20th century. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. I'm happy that you enjoyed this less familiar residence of the Romanovs. And next week I'm launching new series on St. Petersburg. That's going to be the Russian Museum, which is 19th century splendid residence of the Romanov family. And the museum was actually started as a private collection of Alexander III, father to Nicholas II. And when Alexander III died, Nicholas II opened the museum and named it after Alexander III, his father. So basically in every room, there is also a personal touch of Nicholas II in a way. So starting from next week, I will be doing tours about the Russian Museum. Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you so much for your interest in what I show and what I do. And I filmed a lot. I mean, I already had, a lot of filmed content from Israel from my study trips. And last Saturday, I was in Israel Museum and I filmed a lot. It's a great place. There is so much on archaeology, on the history of synagogues in the world, and also art. There's also Impressionism and actually 20th century art and 19th century art there. So a lot of things. So I will be launching those tours in 2 weeks from now, because next week is pretty busy. So I want to give it enough time and attention, and I will schedule it shortly. Thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. So let me also share with you. So the link, so here you are. This is a link to my website where I have my complete schedule published, and there will be tours added really in the next few days. My PayPal account, my Buy Me a Coffee, my YouTube as well. So obviously the recording of this tour also going to be there. So for a few days, I'll keep it in open access. My update from Israel exactly the next day after the attack is also there. And thank you for your support. Thank you for texting me, asking me about my exam. I don't know the results yet. and I will only learn them in May after Passover holidays. And I'm happy to be home. I'm happy to be with my boys. And I honestly, last week, I thought I would never see them again. So thank you everyone for just caring about me and my family. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in 1 hour from now. Bye bye.